When you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always go downtown
and around town. Join host Marita McKinnon as she travels around town interviewing local businesses in the greater Boston area. Whether you're on the North Shore, the South Shore, or even down the Cape, Marita has it covered. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and tune in now as Marita takes you around town.
Hello and welcome to the program Around Town. My name is Marita McKinnon, and this is the program where we travel in and around the greater Boston area, interviewing those local businesses, companies, and organizations within your own communities. Well, today on the program, I have Joseph Batari. He is a loan officer for Northern Bank and Trust, as well as Susan Collins, who is the executive director at Medford Community Housing. So I have both of them on the program today for really an important conversation, something that I hope is going to prompt a lot of our listeners to help out and be engaged and informed in this area. So I want to welcome both of you to the program today.
Thank you very much.
Good to be here, Marita. Thank you very much.
It's great to have you both today. So let me first ask you how you both came together, because I know that you're from two different organizations, and how did you come together to work towards this one goal?
That's a good question. We're both essentially in housing, so you could say in the industry we're kind of like cousins in the industry. So I'm a loan officer with Northern Bank and Trust out of Woburn. And what happened was my boss, who I want to give a shout out to, Tony Rizzo, Tony came to me and he said, Joe, we really want to try to get some boots on the ground in some communities and see what we can do for outreach, to see if we can reach out to some organizations and see if there are some charities, some nonprofits that we can support. So Susan and I had a mutual acquaintance. So he was kind of the bridge between Susan and myself. So we got together, and it just so happened that Susan has a project that's going on as we're speaking to you right now on the Fellsway, which is a two-family house that's being renovated. And there, it happened to be that there was a shortfall of funding that they were having, and maybe Susan can elaborate on that a little bit. But she had an opening for a financial need. So what I did was I went back, took that need that she had, went back to my executives, and I said, listen, this is a great opportunity for us to help out the local community and help this project to continue and not be delayed. So they stepped up to the plate really quickly. They came forth with what she had for a shortfall. We were able to give her that money as a grant, kept her going, and that kind of brought us together and brought me to Medford Community Housing. So that's where I met Susan and where Susan can come in.
So we're very thankful that our friend brought Joe and I together. It was a good chemistry, I think, when we first met. And Joe's new position was doing the outreach, and I kind of gave him what boots on the ground is like.
Right.
Doing
it's guerrilla warfare is what
right.
it is.
That's right. So being on the nonprofit side, I'd come from the private sector and kind of knew what Joe was coming up against and doing it. So we had a great conversation. We were able to talk needs and kind of really cut to the chase about what organizations like our organizations do and the need for capital to continue on to our mission. And Joe was very responsive, got back to us. We had a meeting with his bank. They were very knowledgeable about the work that we were doing in affordable housing, and they really stepped up to the plate quickly and helped, as Joe said, move our project going forward.
Nice. Now, Susan, can you elaborate on what the mission is there at the Medford Community Housing?
So our organization started in 1988, and it was a group of professionals that work in the housing field. And in the late 80s, there was the housing boom. It's like when things really shot up and houses were being purchased and prices skyrocketed. And there was people being priced out of their community, and they weren't able to buy in the area, or they were forced to sell or move someplace else. So this organization got together to start bringing awareness about preserving housing and making it affordable so residents could still live and work in their communities. And that work has continued till this day.
Nice. Very nice. So do you actually cover what's your area that you cover? I mean, I know you're in Medford, but are you open to helping other communities, of course, as well?
Yes, we're open to doing any kind of affordable housing development within the Middlesex County area. There are some other communities that aren't as progressive in doing affordable housing, so we're willing to help out. We do sort of smaller project scale developments. We kind of find that that's a good niche for us. and we're open to doing that. We also teach a first-time homebuyer course that covers anybody can attend from anywhere to come to the program, and they can buy anywhere in the state of Massachusetts. So we do educational outreach for first-time homebuyers buying a house, but our main focus and goal is affordable housing, and it's become a crisis in metropolitan Boston.
Certainly. I know it's something that is kind of not spoken about, really. It's not, I mean, at least I don't hear a lot of people talking about some of the issues and concerns or upcoming crisis, if you will, if we want to use that word, of this housing, living affordability issue that's going on in our own communities. Because you see a lot of people that might not be talking about it, but they are struggling with the cost of living because, as I believe you mentioned earlier, actually off air, that it's something that, yes, our housing is going up, but our wages aren't. So that's something that is causing a huge concern and issue for people in their living, really.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about something that has kind of a shameful connotation to it. So it's not something people are going to outwardly talk about, but it is a crisis in that you have wages not going up, but housing going up. So a typical 2-bedroom in metropolitan Boston is going for $2,400 a month. If you're earning an income of anywhere between $25,000 up to $50,000, you're going to be contributing a significant part of your gross income, not net income, gross income towards housing. So statistics are showing that most people are contributing about 50% of their gross income to housing. Mm-hmm. So that leaves very little to pay for things like health insurance, for food, medical, prescriptions, daycare for your kids, after school programs. I mean, the list goes on, your car, transportation, the list goes on. And there was a really interesting article a couple of months ago by Atlantic Monthly where the writer there said that most Americans don't have $400 for an emergency because of the wage gap and people not having the ability to save and put money aside.
And I mean, that is really shocking because you think about how quickly or unpredictable things in life can be that, your car broke down or something that you need that you weren't expecting to need fixed, or a medical issue comes up or something comes up where you need money to take care of that. But as you're mentioning, a lot of people don't even have $400 set aside. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And it's a concern because you think about, well, now what are we going to do?
Yeah, it's got a shame connotation. Who wants to talk about how broke they are and how they can't make their rent or they're struggling? These days, we don't talk about our problems. We kind of stuff our problems and we try to, keep moving forward, which is great. But in reality, people are trying to move forward, but they're being held back. So that $400 emergency or car repair can put you into getting behind in your rent. And if that continues, then you're behind in other bills, and now you're going down kind of the dark tunnel, and that can create instability. So our organization is really trying to stabilize housing rents to give people the ability to stay in their communities, not have to commute hours, and be able to pay their bills, and maybe hopefully be able to put some money aside in savings. And the thing that was great about talking with Joe is it was bringing somebody in that had been doing lending on houses for people buying homes, but not really knowing what affordable housing meant. And actually over the past, I'd say 6 months, we've really combined and joined a really nice alliance where we're working together. I'm helping him to reach out into communities to talk about things, and their bank is very supportive and active in wanting to make a difference.
Yes, that's a very good point. The thing that I found sobering as I talked to Susan and I got more involved in affordable housing, putting a face to the people that need affordable housing. There's a misconception of who is the typical affordable housing person. Mm-hmm. But I remember speaking to a firefighter in a town, and I just took for granted that he lived in the town that he was serving as a firefighter, and he corrected me really quickly. He said, dude, let me just tell you, I can't afford to live here. Mm-hmm. And these are people that are out there sacrificing their lives.
Yeah, first responders.
Absolutely. So it just helped me to step back and say, this isn't a problem that we sometimes have a stereotype of who the person is that needs affordable housing. It's a huge need. And what I like about what Susan does that's a little different than some other housing organizations that work for affordable housing, she'll go out and try to locate a house, renovate it. After it's renovated, then put people in there with affordable housing, with the rent being so that they could afford it, and it perpetuates over a period. So it's like addressing affordable housing one house at a time and one family at a time. And it's a really good micro approach, and it's a quicker effect. I think Susan could probably relate to that. How she can turn around a project is a lot quicker than some of these large projects that come in and may take years and years to develop. So it's getting to the need and addressing it in a quicker way.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned that putting a face to the problem that's going on, or people who are dealing with it, because it's something that we don't, of course, it's something that's embarrassing for people to talk about, but it's really not just this stereotype of who it affects. It affects all different kinds of people in all different types of industries, kind of across the board. And a lot of people coming out of college, that's really, a huge concern for them. And it's a big wake-up call, too, because a lot of them have the student loan debt, but then maybe they find themselves in a job where they're not making as much as they thought they would with their degree. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I can't afford to live on my own. Let me go back to living with my parents. And, some of them are fortunate enough to be able to do that. But then think about some people who maybe don't have that option. They don't have the option of living with their parents. They don't have somebody that they can live with. They're kind of stuck on their own, having to pay all these bills, and then also trying to find affordable housing and trying to keep up with making enough. So that's something that you mentioned that really I can see us coming into a crisis of sorts.
Well, you also have, speaking of parents, you've got an aging population as well.
Yes.
So if they did have children going to college, yes, they put money aside, but the cost of college has gone up.
Oh, yeah.
The cost of everything else has gone up. Now they've got to plan for retirement. Now they have somebody back in the home that they thought was going to be out of the home. And it's only because the wages that are being paid are not keeping up, again, with the cost of housing. So with that intersection, it's going to make it impossible for a student coming out, unless they get a very, very high-paying job, they are going to start to be paying on their student loans. And also, are we going to be limiting careers and professions based just solely on income? Are you just going to go to college because I have to make X amount of dollars? Are you going there to get educated to contribute to the community? So it's a larger social awareness that we have to start discussing and talking about, that we have to start looking at this from a stability problem, making sure that we can stabilize people and that they do have housing, and also that if they're not going to pay, if companies and corporations aren't going to pay the wages, then they have to start addressing and becoming socially aware that their workers and the work population is people are going to start moving away from the city and not coming to areas like Boston because the pay isn't there to support them being able to live and pay their bills and work and commute, and it's they're not going to go broke doing it.
And I'm so glad that we're talking about this today, because just by us having this conversation is raising awareness, is talking about it and really putting some light on the situation that is going on. And I do want to remind our listeners right now, for those who are just tuning in right now, that today I am talking with Joseph Batari. He is a loan officer of Northern Bank and Trust. And I'm talking to Susan Collins, the executive director of the Medford Community Housing. And today we're talking about how this issue of affordable living and just housing and the issue that's going on with it, but how Medford Community Housing is really just raising awareness, doing everything they can to provide that affordable housing for people who need it. And I want to ask you, Susan and Joseph, is there a solution? What's the solution that you're working on to help people have that affordable housing?
Well, as Joe said, I'm doing it one step at a time. So when I came to the organization in 2011, I could have spent a lot of time going out and outreaching, but because calls were coming in and there were so many people in need, it was putting our steps forward towards acquiring a property. We do get funding. The federal government is very, very good about affordable housing, but that also can get curtailed due to Congress. So that affects funding, that affects projects. So we're able to get some funding. There's the North Suburban Consortium, which is money that's provided by HUD that provides money for affordable housing in 7 towns and communities, and Medford is one of those towns. The municipality can help contribute, but because the cost of housing is so expensive, that helps us acquire the property, but that doesn't help us doing the renovations. So we do need more capital contribution to do those renovations because we get what's called a deed restriction going out for 30 years. Mm-hmm. So we have to put a lot of money into the property, bring it up to code, and make it that those improvements are going to last over a long period of time. because we have a low cash flow of rents coming in. We don't make a ton of money on the rental income. We have very small amount of cash flow. So what's happening is that doing it a little bit at a time and taking a house, we're getting people in sooner. And as Joe said, sometimes these projects take 2 to 3 years. The larger ones may take 5 to 6 years. So I kind of thought, instead of paying, no offense, Joe, interest to the bank,
That's all right.
I thought, let's get the funding together. Let's do a smaller project. We get people in the house. And now we've got, a house that's providing affordable rents for the next 30 years. So that's going to house many families over the course of time, but it's getting people in and moving them along so that their lives, as I mentioned, can stabilize.
Just to interject something too, we tend to think that because we may be in a comfortable situation, that, well, why should I care about affordable housing? I'm in a living situation, so as long as it's not affecting me personally, why should I care? But what we've talked about is, many of us are living really on the razor's edge of life. And it only takes 1 or 2 events to happen, not necessarily maybe to us, but to someone in our family. And before you know it, they can't afford to pay their rent. Hence why affordable housing is such a key topic. So it's sometimes we have to see outside of it and say, well, so what? It doesn't affect me. Well, it's affecting a lot of people, and it's affecting our state, it's affecting our country. So in approaching this, the thing too that could help is to raise the consciousness of local corporations and local businesses, because the more contributions that an organization like Susan can get, then she can put more funding into the next house and then get the next project underway, because that's a big part of what she does, is being able to get the money to put down, and the more money she can raise through contributions can speed up her next project. So that's another thing that, to raise the local awareness of the local community companies, even the mom and pop shops that are very generous to organizations like Susan, because every dollar does make a difference.
And I just want to talk about that a little bit. When we first met, that the mom and pop shops, those guys are always hit up all the time to contribute to this charity, to that charity. These guys are struggling to keep their businesses together, and I have a lot of respect for that. So that's kind of not a well that I go to tap to, because I do respect the fact that they are trying to make a living, and they do give, but they can't kind of give the kind of contributions that are needed to do renovations to a house that's 1915 that we have to bring up to code and stuff. So we also want to make it safe. We want to make it affordable. And we're also targeting an income group that is not the homeless population, because there's many good people that do that work, but it's once the homeless people get into housing to stabilize their lives, that's kind of where the next level. So the people that we work with are people that are actively working, or they have income coming in, but it's still not enough to pay the rent. And we can go all the way up to WRol and the New Hampshire border and over, that rents are getting into record rates that we've never seen before. So we're now talking people commuting 2 hours, 2.5 hours just to pay and keep their job in the Boston area, but then they have to commute those kind of distances to afford to pay rent.
Well, the other thing, too, I thought of, too, Marita, is, there are programs that people have vouchers for to be able to give to rent at an affordable level. But what happens there is a lot of the landlords may be reticent to want to do that, because there's a lot of people that have vouchers, but they can't get anyone to rent them the properties, which makes an organization like Susan so important, because she's creating the environment by renovating the house and being the landlord. She's bringing in these people at an affordable level, so that you don't have to that idea of I want to help somebody in the affordable community, but that thought of but not in my backyard. That kind of takes away that stigma. These are good families that she's helping. They just can't afford to live in the greater Boston area with the income that they have. And who wants to commute 4 hours back and forth?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So that's why bringing it to a local area like Medford and the towns that she works in is so important.
Absolutely. And say that I am a local business right now. Maybe I'm a corporation that's listening to this program right now. How can I, as a business, contribute to what you're doing at the Medford Community Housing? How do they go about that?
Well, first of all, they can contact me, Susan Collins, and our email address is info@medfordcommunityhousing.org, and I'm happy to speak to them. It's also a charitable contribution, so there's tax incentives for doing that. And also, it's bringing awareness and acknowledging their worker base. I had somebody the other day that's a branch manager at a business, single dad with 2 kids, and he's been at this income level, but he can't find a place to, rent for his children. He's got to have after-school care because he works long hours, and, he's stuck. So he has to commute 2 hours each way to do the job, but he wants to be back closer to his job, and it's wrecking a toll on his family and the time with his kids. So, if more corporations, and maybe on the upper level, not to be disrespectful, but you kind of don't have those conversations with the assistant branch manager or the person that's the teller or the person that is the teacher's assistant at your local school or the 911 operator that's putting in long hours. A lot of times you don't really realize what people's living situations are. So it's an opportunity to donate, to give, and obviously get acknowledged for that. But it's also it's being socially aware that we're not kind of living in our own little bubble, but we're a community, and we all get to places not just by ourselves, but by lending a hand and reaching out, and that brings another person forward and helps stabilize. They remember that, they reach out, and they help people. So that's how we kind of grow. That's how we get better at being a better society and supporting other people to be able to do what careers are going to be helpful to the community, to themselves, but they shouldn't have to pay the price to not be able to afford to have a home and a place to live.
The other thing, too, some of the corporations that may have charities that they support or nonprofits that they support, maybe there's grant funding available for an organization like Susan's that some of these corporations could look at and say, hey, can I look locally and support affordable housing in the community? And if there's grant funding available, Susan's organization is an excellent organization to look at for that.
And I do want to give a shout out to the fact that we have gotten funding from the North Suburban Home Consortium, which is HUD, and also through CDBG, which is Community Block Grant Funding through the City of Medford. However, we can't be leaning on our municipalities and the state for the federal government to solve this crisis. This is a joint effort. Employees that have a place to live, that have a roof over their head, they're not struggling every day. I mean, that's a better worker. That's somebody that's, coming forward to work, not with a lot of problems and kind of setting things aside. So I think it's a social awareness, and it's not being talked about on the national level in this presidential campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's something that we need to raise awareness about. We need to keep talking about it. We need to keep pressing the issue because we really are on the verge or on the edge, if you will, of it being a complete crisis, and it's something that we haven't been talking about, or a lot of people haven't been talking about for, multiple reasons. I understand it's a tough subject and it can be embarrassing, but it's something that we need to address. And I want to applaud you for the efforts that you're doing at the Medford Community Housing, and of course your contribution as well, Joe, in the Northern Bank and Trust, and just everything that you're doing. But real quick before I let you go, I understand that you have some fundraising ideas, opportunities that you're thinking about in ways to help raise money for, the Medford Community Housing. Tell me about that.
Well, we're looking to add some lightness to the subject so people don't get all depressed about it. But
it is a depressing subject.
Yeah, sometimes.
People,
and
let's
I don't
talk
mean to
about
make light of
affordable
that.
housing, and everyone gets depressed. But Susan had a really good contact. So
I have somebody that we kind of crossed paths that was purchasing a property, and he happens to be a comedian in the local area. So we're really trying to put together a fundraising comedy night. We're looking for some more comedians that are on a larger level of national attention, and that come from the Boston area. And
we have a lot of good Boston comedians that have made us big, some people, And the thought was, when Susan and I were talking, is if we can tap into some of the talent that may be willing to give back, to have a night of comedy to support affordable housing, to bring awareness to it, maybe to bring some corporate sponsorship to it. It's in the infancy stage, so this is a shout out to anyone that's listening. We're open to any suggestions, or if anyone has any ideas on something that they feel that they'd be willing to step forward and contribute, Susan would be glad to entertain that. But we thought it would be a good opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right, and it's also, we'd like to do it before the election or close to around the election to also bring the awareness. Again,
Great
like
idea.
you said, people aren't talking about it. It's kind of, time to bring it out of the closet. And I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to come out and being sympathetic and acknowledging that there is a problem out there. And we're looking for solutions.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Your station, one thing I loved when I spoke to you is how you said your radio station and your group is very socially aware of supporting causes like this. And that was really good for us. So hats off to you, Marita, for having us.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I mean, I'm more than happy to have you both on the program today to really raise awareness and talk about this issue because, I believe that our listening audience, of course, cares about this as well. And it's something that I think they're going to resonate with. I think that it's hopefully something that they'll, if they can, be able to, assist with and contribute towards making a difference. And it's my pleasure having you both on the program today. And before I let you go, what's the best way to contact you there?
So the best way to get a hold of me is info@medfordcommunityhousing.org. Or you can contact me by phone. My number is 978-317-8998.
Probably the best way to reach me is my cell phone, 617-529-8266. That way you will get to me directly. And my email is jbottari@nbtc.com. And the last thing I want to just give a shout out to the Bostonians out there. The thing about our community is when there's a crisis like there was with the marathon, I was proud to be a Bostonian to see. And so this is another crisis, maybe not on the level of that, but our community is a generous community. And there's a lot of people supporting Susan's organization, and we want to thank them for that too.
You said it right, Joe. It's very true that the people here in Boston have just this powerful connection with one another. When something is going on, of course, it affects all of us, and we tend to come together, which is such a great characteristic of the people here in Boston. So we kind of need to come together, of course, for this issue that's happening right here in our own neighborhoods and our own communities here in Boston, because it's not just happening elsewhere, it's happening right here. Mm-hmm. So once again, I want to thank you both for coming on the program today, and you can certainly give us a call here at the radio station for more information on the Medford Community Housing, how you could help if you are a business, a corporation, and you want to donate and you want to contribute to helping make a difference. Certainly, we will point you in that direction. Well, until next time, everyone, have a fantastic day.
Thank you for traveling with us around town. Join Marita every Saturday morning from 8 to 8:30 a.m. right here on WROL 950 AM, The Spirit of Boston.